Just to recap, last time we pulled the motor, drive shaft, jet pump, impeller, and the exhaust, pretty much everything. And I'm switching it over from the threaded system shaft with the prop threads onto the shaft to the spline system because I ordered the jet pump with the spline. So if you order another jet pump for your js550, just be aware there are two different kinds, and you want to make sure that you're either getting the splined or the threaded. I went with the splined because first I didn't know, and also it just seems like a better bearing system. So just be aware if you have a motor swap, you need to be careful with what kind of sprocket you have coming off the motor to your drive shaft, because like I had, it didn't fit, but it had the same threads. So I was actually able to just pop this one off and put the old one back on so that it mates up with the motor. So I'm probably going to start, I think I'm going to start in the center. Alright, so I cleaned off the old silicone just with a flat razor blade, and I put a solid bead all the way around, just underneath those bolt holes, so that it can kind of splooge around there. And then I also did a one right around the hole, and you kind of want an unbroken bead, or else you might get leaking. This is 795 black caulking. It's outdoor grade and for metal, wood, So make sure you get exterior grade, whatever you use. It can be clear, white, doesn't matter. I try not to do a crazy amount. This is probably plenty, or else the next person who has to replace this part will probably hate you. And hopefully, that's not me. So, I recommend doing a dry fit, just so you know everything's going to go the way you plan. And I cleaned off all the caulking around this, so I'm basically going to just do a solid, pretty thick bead going up this flange here, over the top, and down the other side. So, start doing that. That should be all you need. Whoever did it before had it all in here, and maybe that's because they siliconed the wear ring in, but you don't want to leave anything on there because it just disrupts the water flow, and then you'll have problems. The cavitation could cause a lot of issues, and it may not seem like much, but it causes a big loss in power. This tolerance has to be pretty tight so you don't get cavitation. And also, the main reason I'm doing this, replacing the impeller pump and the drive shaft, is because I had very bad tolerances, and I think I was getting a lot of cavitation. My motor actually was loose, didn't have very good engine mount bolts in it. So I had a host of issues, but the big one was it wasn't cooling. So I'm hoping through this that it will fix it, because this port on the side is what cools your motor. So the jet pump spins and pumps water through the system up through your motor, and I was just not getting the water cooled because it ran great on land. So if you're having this issue, very well could be your jet pump, and all you need to do is take off your intake grate and maybe look at your impeller and see what the tolerances are. Maybe take the back half off of this. There's just 4 of these bolts. You should be able to take that off and maybe see 2. So let's get to putting this in. So this tube here has to plug in as you shove it forward. You can see where our caulking is supposedly sealing up against there. And I might actually have to go in there and make sure that it's actually sealed, because there's a bunch of gaps. So make sure to seal those. This tube, as I was saying, is your cooling. It plugs in there, does a little loop, and then goes into the hull. This little linkage, super easy to put on. Alright, motor's in. I'm just kind of working on tying down some last minute stuff. I got my secondary bilge pump in there, all run. Make sure you run your throttle cable and your gas lines and your ground wires. I'm hooking up the battery last. This gap here, you're going to want to try to avoid any gaps like this. I think it should be okay, but because of the motor swap and the engine mounts they had, it leaves it with a gap. So I had to do new engine mount bolts, and I actually had to do some spacers. I used some old nuts I had and used them as spacers to lift it a little bit. And you might want to double check your spark plug wires. If they got yanked at all, they could be not giving you spark, so when you try to start it, that could be an issue. I'm about ready to put the exhaust in and the gas tank, and then tie down the last minute stuff. That's ready for a test.